Ma'am, shall we start?
Start. Yeah.
ठीक है when Zoom says.
Namaste and greetings. I am Fizam Hajan, visiting researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, New Delhi. Prabhav, Imam Niti Anusandhan Sansthan, Nai Delhi. Extend a warm welcome to you all for joining us today for the presentations. I'll again state the rules for the presentation. The fellows will be given 4 minutes to present, and then 1 minute will be given for the expert comments. And I guess all the fellows are ready. Should I just state the names of all the fellows who are going to present today?
Yeah.
All right. Momita Singlaji, Chinwe Onyukevuji, Bushrali Khanji, Nimita Pandeji, Namgeji, Afshin Fatima ji, Bharat Singh ji, Aditya Raj Kanojia ji, Mansi Malhotra ji, Taiba Atik ji, Dhanshri Pradeep ji, Avni Sablok ji, Vin Paik ji, Claire ji, Jubin Gogoi ji. So these are the 15 presentations which will be presented today by the fellows. And we begin by Momita Singla ji. I hope she's here. Yes,
I am here.
All right.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Are you going to share your presentation?
Yeah, my presentation is supposed to be shown by the team. Like the PPT is, I have mailed.
All right, it will be shared. Just give it as a second. And you will be given again 4 minutes. And then 1 minute for the expert comment.
Can you just repeat the participants who is presenting here?
Sure. Momita Singla ji, Chinwe Onyukevu ji, Bushra Ali Khan ji, Nimita Pandey ji, Namgay ji, Afshin Fatima ji, Bharat Singh ji, Aditya Raj Kanojia ji, Mansi Malhotra ji, Taiba Atik ji, Dhananshri Pradeep ji, Avni Sablok ji, Vin Paik ji, Claire, Jubin Gogoi ji. There are 15 participants today who will present.
Okay, so who's going first?
The first one is Momita Singla ji.
Has she joined? Yeah, she was there earlier, no?
Yes, ma'am, I am here.
Okay.
She's waiting for the presentation to be shared. Let me just confirm regarding that, ma'am.
Achha, so Priyanka ji is sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Please go.
Shall I start?
Yes, please introduce yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Momita Singha. From India, I am currently pursuing master's degree from Central University of Sikkim. Now moving straight to my topic, that is significance of feminist foreign policy in India. Next slide, please. Now we have done 8 classes, and now we have an idea about what foreign policy connotes. It's a strategy and movement that is beyond gender equalization, and it's the effort to increase the visibility of women in the realm of international relation. Mainly, it incorporates equality, inclusiveness, intersectionality, commitment to peace, justice, by neglecting and questioning the traditional social order that is dominant in the global scenario. For example, the masculine ideas of power, security, conflict, and sovereignty. Next slide. Now, Indian foreign policy has gone through several major phases. Like other countries or nations like France, Canada, Spain, Luxembourg, Germany, India has not formally adopted feminist foreign policy, but it has shown commitment to gender sensitivity norms. For example, ratification of CEDAW, that is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1993, then United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 5, that is gender equality and women empowerment, then many women supporting projects. Also, women has been seen more participating in the international and national forums. This all example shows that how significant achievement, how India has achieved, like India's women leadership has achieved in the global scenario. Next slide. The study will be based on the constructivist approach of international relations, mainly considering India's identity by acknowledging the identity like care ethics, patriarchy, existing realities that are guided by the shared beliefs, norms, ideas, and interaction. Next is the study gap. That is feminist. As I have did the literature review, I got to know and I have researched that there is a gap between the scholarly works, that the dominant concepts that are there in the realist approach that are there in the India's context, like the security, patriarchal norms, now many political, economic, and security policies that are not reimagined or looked from a feminist lens. And also there is a lack of proper theoretical model in the understanding of feminist foreign policy from the Indian perspective. Next slide. The objectives are to first is to theorize feminist foreign policy through a constructivist approach. Second is to examine the significance of feminist foreign policy in shaping India's post-2014 diplomatic stances. Now, post-2014 I have used because 2014 is the year when feminist foreign policy was adopted worldwide. For example, Sweden. And 2014 is the year when it's a new phase for the Indian foreign policy. Next slide. Moving to the research question, the first question is how India's identity as a rising power integrates feminist principles into foreign policy. And the second question is what role does women representation in India's post-2014 foreign policy play in shaping the country's diplomatic priorities? Next slide. Now coming to research methodology, this research will be based on the qualitative approach, incorporating both primary as well as secondary sources. In primary, it will incorporate union budget, official documents, welfare policies, official government announcement, policy guidelines, and in secondary, selected books, journals, newspaper, internet sources, etc. Now coming to the last thing, that is, next slide. Significance of the study. By exploring Indian foreign policy from a feminist foreign policy perspective, it will be a connecting bridge between the actual theory and practice. It will also provide a deeper understanding that how gender-sensitive perspectives in India were prevalent during the post-2014 era. This brings to end of my presentation. Thank you.
Well, just show me first slide. After that, the very first content. This is the title slide. Yeah. Gender equality by neglecting traditional social order in international relations and mainly income. Yeah. So now what you call as a primary sources, that is also secondary sources. Okay. Primary sources means if you interview diplomats or politicians or people in the embassy and all, then it becomes primary. No? or even the women activists or those who call themselves feminists, that is a primary. Meeting a person or a community and you yourself collecting data, that is called primary source. So what you are talking about, going through the official documents, articles, journals, books, all of them are considered to be secondary sources. So you can say either if you want primary sources, then you will have to come up with a focus group discussion or in-depth interview, or you send questions by email to the people who are opinion makers in feminist foreign policy. That is a one way. Or otherwise, you do the content analysis of whatever available sources are. So that you have to decide. But what you call primary sources is not a primary sources. Primary sources in quantitative and qualitative analysis, or even if you do triangulation, it has to be that you yourself get involved and interview people or officers or stakeholders, or conduct focus group discussion or take interview on WhatsApp video or online. That would become primary source because you yourself have collected that data. That is.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can decide what you want to do, but you have to bring some new angle into it, because when you talk about the constructivist approach believes in construction of new knowledge. So whatever you have said so far is already there. So what new knowledge you will be giving with your research, that you will have to specify,
Okay.
Or if you have access to diplomats, or if you have access to your MPs and MLAs in the area, or if you know some articulate people who have opined on feminist foreign policy or women's rights or gender equality, whatever, if you supplement your research, whatever literature review you have done and gaps you have found, if you supplement it by doing that, then it would be new knowledge, So think about how you are going to add new knowledge in your chapter.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. I will think.
Okay, Michelle. Bhattacharya, you are using Michelle.
I would like to make a small announcement. All the fellows, kindly change your names since I think so the link was shared. Just go at the bottom, there's a participants. You can see an icon. From there, you can change your name. Just do that. It'll be helpful for ma'am as well and for everyone, one of us to identify. Thank you. Over to you, Fiza.
Yeah, thank you, Vishali. So I'll invite Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya ji for expert comments.
Yes, good afternoon. In fact, I just heard about this. I was asked to join, so I was not prepared. I'll listen to. Yeah, no, but let me comment. I totally agree with Professor Patel regarding what she said about primary research, primary work. Now, the other thing that I wanted to point out is that she had said something about India signing the CEDAW and acceding to SDG 5, which is already well, but that is not really feminist foreign policy. Many countries have done that. One can also do research. I mean, if you're looking at the extent, as a constructivist approach that she's talking about, at the extent that India, or the lack of extent, one can say, by looking at things like, we had this vaccine policy. Now, whether that had a gender content, whether it was meant for women and girls, particularly, I mean, if you are helping on it as such, if you are in your foreign policy, you are putting in that gender, that would be more of a feminist foreign policy than actually what she's talking about. Because secondary sources, government data will also show the extent of aid that we have given for genders, for women and girls. So that also would be part of primary research. So looking into that would be helpful. Now, I'm not very sure whether she's writing an article or she's it's going to be part of her research. But the way it has been framed right now, it will make a very general article. Okay, So if it is going to be, a research article, that way she has to do a bit more of looking into the content of India's foreign policy. Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So now we move on to the second participant, Chinweji. You can go on with your presentation. Chinwe Onyekuji. I'm really sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. Chinweji, are you here?
You can see her name, no? Even for Momita, it was showing Vaishali Singh. Are they all using Vaishali Singh's?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
ma'am,
that's the common link that we have shared for
Okay.
today's PPT. So that's why I had asked everyone to change the name. It'll be easy for you and everyone.
Yeah. Because there are so many, it's 5 Vaishali Singhs on the screen. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It's creating a little bit of confusion. I think we have Bushra. We can start with Bushra ji.
I request Bushra Ali Khan ji to go on with her presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Fiza. So I shared my slides with IMPRI. Can someone please put it up?
Sure, just give us a minute.
Yeah,
Sana
of
will
course.
share it.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And namaste, Adab, Professor VIBHUTI ma'am, and everyone present here. I am Bushra, a guest member at University of Sussex, UK, and an incoming PhD student at King's India Institute, King's College, London. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm really glad to be here. So my research has actually changed a little bit in its scope. Given my original proposal, I think it was a little bit ambitious. So I narrowed it down to research the gender gap specifically in India's refugee management policies with a focus on Rohingya women and girls. So next slide, please. So I will not repeat what other fellows have said yesterday and today on the importance of a feminist lens to various policies and frameworks and the gaps in addressing these issues. So I will just jump right in the major lens and theories of my research. So I will draw on obviously the feminist theories and methodologies, but also on intersectionality and more specifically on the restorative justice theory. And I hope to propose a framework or some recommendations that prioritizes the voices and experiences of displaced women and girls, like Rohingya, from Rohingya community. So who often face, exclusionary inclusion in traditional refugee policies and frameworks. So I will tell briefly what is restorative justice theory. So the theory, it was originally developed in the context of criminal justice, but now it proposes to repair relationships between displaced individuals, host communities, and the governing bodies by centering the voices and agencies of the marginalized groups. So I think this aligns very well with the feminist principles, because it emphasizes intersectionality and social justice as well. So that is the major reason why I'm looking at this theory. And I think the feminist restorative justice theory, if we add that to the restorative theory, I think it builds on the principles of traditional restorative justice, and then it integrates the feminist critiques to address gender power imbalances and structural inequalities. Next slide, please. So the objectives. So the objective is that I will be analyzing the limitations of the existing ad hoc refugee framework in India, because we don't have a law, we don't have any framework or policies. It is all on ad hoc basis and the old foreigners law that is, through which we are looking at the refugees coming in and the asylum seekers. And I will also, as I said, I will apply the feminist principles of restorative theory and propose somewhat a framework or a few recommendations. So my key research questions are on the slide. I mean, how can these theories, shape the inclusive refugee framework, and how it can bring into the India's refugee protection model, and what mechanisms can enhance the inclusivity and protection. Next slide, please. So the case study, will be focused on the Rohingya women and girls in India. It's going to be a desk research, secondary sources, literature review, case studies, policy analysis, media reports, Next slide, please. So some of the researchers and prominent feminist scholars that I am thinking of that I will be looking at will be Gayatri Spivak, because her work on post-colonialism and feminism is remarkable. Nivedita Menon as well. Leela Abu-Logod, she has done really amazing work on cultural politics and gender. I was also thinking about looking at Aisha Jalal. I mean, she's a historian, but maybe, I mean, I will read a little bit around her work and somehow maybe it can, add to the geopolitics and identity issues, as well as some Western, Judith Butler and Bell Hooks, who have also done amazing work. And they were discussed in some of the sessions in this fellowship as well. And obviously I will again watch Ms. Rita Manchanda's lecture on the politics of feminization of the refugee subject. So yeah, that's my work.
You can also download all the issues of Rita Manchanda's journal, no, which she edits from Wisconsin.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
She shared the link as well. I have that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Okay,
So
thank you, ma'am.
Rohingya Women's Voice also will be there.
Mm-hmm.
Will you be able to interview women in the refugee camps or women who are displaced from Rohingya community?
No, ma'am. I think because I don't think I have that kind of time to do that, to go on the field. So I think it will be based on the media reports and basically
and
it's a
even
desk
the human
research.
rights organizations have also.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Like Rohingya, like Fortify Rights as well. They've done some amazing research. So I think it'll be a properly desk research, secondary sources. Yeah. I hope that's fine because I think it'll be difficult for me to.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Now I request Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya ji for her comments.
Yes, thank you. This sounds good. But first, of course, I mean, what you're talking about, restorative justice theory and intersectionality, all that makes a lot of sense. But, when it comes to Rohingyas, that India, South Asia, no country in South Asia has signed the 1951 Convention on Refugees, and each one follows its own. So when it comes to Rohingyas, and there are camps, basically you said there's going to be a desk research, but exactly what are you looking at? What is your methodology? Could you please explain your methodology, the methods that you'll be following for your research?
So, ma'am, so I will be reading the literature review, like academic articles, reports from NGOs, and available UN documentations, case studies that a lot of NGOs and international organizations have done, and not necessarily the ones who have done in India. I think I can also look the ones that are done in Bangladesh, the Rohingya community in Bangladesh. And
here, in fact, I'd suggest that you also look at some research which has been done in Canada, because Canada has given a lot of aid to Bangladesh, or did as such, for the Rohingya women, especially gendered. But the government has not used them actually for gender or whatever. But anyway, there is some work on that, and especially at the UNHCR, their reports. But what I was specifically asking is that what is your methodology? What method will you be following for your research?
I don't understand. Method as in?
Content analysis, critical reflection on the content of whatever reports.
Yes, it will be an analytical framework. Yeah. So I will be looking at like gender intersectionality, like focusing on the Rohingya women and girls, and through the restorative justice lens, of course, and then a little bit of comparative analysis, because in India, not a lot of research has been done on Rohingya community as a whole, but even less is on the Rohingya women and girls. So there will be some kind of like a comparative analysis between like the Rohingya community in Bangladesh. And if you're suggesting Canada, I'm happy to look at that as well.
Okay. In fact, I mean, so when you're writing a proposal, you need to put in a section on methodology. All right. So read up. Now there are lots of books on research methodology, the methods that you follow, because any university will be asking for this. Okay. Just take a look at research methodology. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I'll like to invite Chinwe for his presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Faiza. My name is Chinwe Onyukwu. Currently pursuing a degree in gender and foreign policy from the University of Ibadan in Nigeria. I am also in a public servant working in as a government official in Nigeria, working on women's as a senior policy advisor for women affairs. My topic is on gender and global diplomacy. The study will be assessing the implications of Nigeria's absence of a feminist foreign policy. What are the benefits and pathways to adoption? I'll be exploring the critical role Nigeria plays in contributing to peacekeeping, regional integration, and development aid. The research will also be looking at how Nigeria's foreign policy, which lacks feminist principles currently, how its adoption of an FFP could promote gender equity and enhance Nigeria's diplomatic structure and contribute to global equality efforts. Currently, Nigeria does not have a feminist foreign policy. Nigeria has experienced a series of transformations over the years, experiencing a paradigm shift from Africa as a centerpiece of Nigeria as its centerpiece and focusing on Nigeria's national interests. Despite these several failed promises and different policy change and policy shifts, Nigeria still lacks a feminist foreign policy, particularly when it has to do with women in leadership and women's participation in peace building. We've had several unfavorable foreign trade policies, to arbitrary shutting down of land borders from poor consular services to denigrating international image, and from increasing debt profile to poor diplomatic relations. All this has affected Nigeria's foreign relation, and it is in an abysmal state with no little or no direction. But sadly, even in all these events, there still lacks gender perspectives, gender inequities and gender inequalities continues to thrive in the country, and which shows that most of this lack of development progress is because of the inability to mainstream gender in its foreign policy. Next slide, please. Just like I have led the contest, as a result of this gender-based inequalities and inequities have persisted in the foreign policy of Nigeria's decision-making. And feminist foreign policies in nations like Sweden and Canada have demonstrated benefits in promoting gender equity, which Nigeria has yet to adopt. And addressing this gender policy is critical for ethical and effective diplomacy, as well as tackling global challenges affecting women in Nigeria. Next slide, please. So the three objectives I'll be focusing on in this study will be to critically analyze Nigeria's current foreign policy framework and its implications for gender equality. I will also be evaluating what global and African best practices in FFP, such as those of Sweden, Canada, and South Africa, how they will be applicable to Nigeria's context. And I will also try to develop a strategic roadmap for integrating feminist principles into Nigeria's foreign policy, focusing on the feasibility, the sustainability, and the alignment with national development priorities. Next slide, please. The key research questions will be on what are the key gender implications of Nigeria's current foreign policy? How has it affected women in Nigeria? How has it affected the global relations, where it has to do particularly with women in terms of health, in terms of peace building, in terms of food and agricultural sustainability, even in climate change? What has Nigeria been able to place its gender perspectives to ensure that it's the vulnerable population have inclusivity in all that it does? The second question will be, how have feminist foreign policies globally shaped socioeconomic and diplomatic outcomes in Nigeria? What strategic changes are needed for Nigeria to adopt an FFP? And how can Nigeria lead gender-sensitive diplomacy in Africa? Next slide, please.
Chinweji, you will have to wrap up in half a minute.
Okay, can we go to the research methodology, the theoretical framework, the case? Can I go to the conclusion, please? Next slide. My findings will focus on Nigeria's current policies and how it perpetuates systemic gender inequities. The feminist foreign policies enhance inclusivity, strengthen governance, and align with global gender equity goals. The implications will be adopting an FFP positions Nigeria as a leader in African diplomacy, and it will also promote sustainable development through gender-sensitive policymaking. I will be using approaches, qualitative and quantitative approaches in my research methodology, where I will be discussing in KIA interviews, and I will ensure that the findings will bring out this how it perpetuates gender systemic inequities in Nigeria. Thank you.
I now hand over to the experts for the comments.
Yeah. Thank you, Chinwe, for such a systematic presentation. I just wanted to know that are you aware of this organization called AWARD, Association of African Women in Research and Development, which was formed during the decade, and they have done a lot of research about Pan-African solidarity and some of the common agenda with the African nations need to have, no? So, are you familiar with that kind of literature? Because your theoretical framework is going to be informed by critical feminist theory. So, it's important that you are acclimatized with the literature which the African feminists have brought out for nearly 35
Thank you
years.
so much. I'll look into that and read more about it.
Acha. So Mariam Savane and so many feminists who have done country level work as well as the work at a Pan-African discourses, no? And some of the specificities of North Africa or say East Africa and South Africa, where the trajectories of colonialism and post-colonialism have been little different. So culture specific intervention. And within that, what is the Nigerian feminist or the Nigerian feminist foreign policy can do? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Prof.
I now invite Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya ji.
Thank you, Chinwe. That was interesting work. And I'd be happy to look at your research once it's done. But as Professor Patel suggested, that there is a lot. But apart from that, there are many other organizations and which do specific work on gender, especially in South Africa. And there is quite a bit of literature on this. So maybe you said that you're going to do interviews and quantitative research. Who are the kind of people are you thinking of interviewing? Chinwe?
Nigeria has a National Institute of International Studies. We have a group of international relations committee members who will be interviewing, and also NGOs, civil society organizations that have worked in trying to push feminist activism in the Nigerian civil society. A lot of the things that have been achieved in trying to push for women in the country has come through the civil society, and that has been my background. I hope to interview them and also go to the Nigerian National Institute of Legal Studies to also find out how they intend to mainstream gender and feminism into the Nigerian foreign policy.
And how would Nigerian diplomat?
Yes, Nigerian diplomats.
Thank you.
She's herself in the government job, so it would be easier for her
to access them. Oh, great, good.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Chinwe. Yeah.
Now I invite Nimita Pandey for her presentation.
Thank you, Fiza, and a very warm afternoon or evening to everyone. I hope my slides are visible.
Yes, you can make it.
Sure.
slideshow. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just a moment. Okay, sorry. So good evening, everyone. My topic for today's presentation is Gender Mainstreaming in Science Diplomacy, a Global South Perspective. I am Dr. Nimita Pandey. I'm an assistant professor at the Department of Social Data Science and Policy at the School of Social and Behavioral Science at Amrita Vishwavidyapeetham. We at the new campus, which is at Faridabad, and my work revolves around gender and technology, entrepreneurship, and evidence-based policy making. So in today's discussion, I would be reflecting on how important it is to have gender-related considerations in science diplomacy to set the context, particularly in the Global South, where underrepresentation of women in STEM and STEM-related decision-making persists. We have realized that through our own study, which was a UNESCO publication called A Braided River, the Universe of Indian Women in Science, that there are many invisible biases, structural inequalities, different socio-cultural norms and stereotypes, and also from an institutional perspective, the myopic character of policies, which has limited scopes and objective, leads to a lot of issues related to involvement, promotion, retention, and also positioning women in leadership positions. The relevance of this study and gender mainstreaming in science diplomacy as a whole reflects on three different aspects. One, of course, it is about to amplify the voices of women in the global scientific discussions, which addresses the socioeconomic disparities. And also, it is important to reflect that it is not just a matter of rectifying the historical social injustice done to women, but it is important to recognize their value in the socio-economic fabric of the global landscape as well, in order to tackle pressing global challenges, particularly when we are discussing science, technology, innovation for sustainable development goals. And drawing from the feminist foreign policy principle, I think there is a lot of scope to do co-learning, I would say, from the idea of drawing from feminist foreign policy and integrating those aspects to science diplomacy, particularly to include the aspects of transparency, equity, and the multiplicity of perspectives we could have in globalizing science and innovation. While looking at the literature and also reflecting on certain practices and policy scenarios, we realize that the application of feminist theories in science diplomacy remains largely unexamined. It has been touched upon, but that is one of the also a critical aspect that most of the research focuses on the northern perspective, or you can say the Eurocentric perspective, neglecting the challenges which are very peculiar to the Global South countries. Based on that and from the literature review, we derived two strong overarching objectives for the study. One is to understand the challenges and the significance of gender representation in science diplomacy. And the other aspect is to explore best practices that could demonstrate effective integration of gender perspective in science diplomacy, more from a policy perspective. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So we borrowed a lot from different ideas from the feminist foreign principles, looking at the aspect of inclusion and equity in science and diplomatic arenas, amplifying marginalizing voices, particularly women in the practice of science, and demystifying and expanding the horizon of science also, because it's high time that we start recognizing not just women doing high science, but also doing traditional sciences and valuing traditional knowledge where women has a strong hold altogether across different sector, be it health or agriculture or even climate change. The approach or methodology I'm intending to adopt is a case study approach looking at 2 to 3 different countries and focusing on secondary sources of data. Some of the data would revolve around their policy documents, the government reports, where such kind of discussions or gender inclusion has taken place in different policy perspective. My primary data source would revolve or stick to science and technology attaches in certain countries, and also looking at women in science who are involved in mega science projects or are in the leadership positions. As you can see that in my slides, you will see pictures of women whom I have been in touch for my book, who are representing different leadership position in science. So I would be reaching them with my questionnaire and doing some sort of an expert interview to focus or add some value to this study. Some of the aspects I would be looking into is content analysis of STI-related policies, but not ignoring other policies which has relevance in the global arena, be it the G20, the UN reports and all, which has some bearing on looking at science diplomacy from a gender lens. Some of the indicators I was reflecting on gender representation in science diplomacy role, socio-cultural, economic, and institutional factors affecting participation, promotion, and retention, focusing on how women have been playing a role across different science diplomacy projects, which could be a good, example to take forward for adopting different policy practices.
Nimita Pandeyji,
Yeah.
can you wrap up now? You have already
Yes,
exceeded more than 2 minutes.
this is the last slide. So just to highlight that the probable case studies, India and Rwanda and Brazil, looking at different, say, continental shifts in the global south. Rwanda, India, and Brazil are some of the cases we thought would be a good case study to reflect on science diplomacy, because a lot of work and documentation have been done across looking at STEM and their leadership position, and also the dichotomy across how women are exceeding in diplomacy but may not be in science diplomacy. So that kind of also the dichotomy could bring some flavor to the research study. Hence, we are looking at these case studies. And with this, I would like to end my presentation. Looking forward to hear from Professor Patel and Professor Bhattacharya. Thank you.
Over to the experts now.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Nimita Pandey, for a very, very interesting topic. In fact, I have been a member of Mission for Empowerment of Science and Technology of Ministry of Science and Technology, where Dr. Vinita Sharma did a Herculean, she made a Herculean effort of bringing so many important elements, including gender responsive budgeting. In fact, when India declared it in 2001, the first ministry to implement and include gender responsive budgeting was Ministry of Science and Technology. It has also acted as a role model for other post-colonial countries. So I think India's solidarity and actual support to Rwanda, I think that also you can bring out, no? Because India has played a very important role in the rebuilding of the war-torn country, no? And to what extent women scientists also played important role in mentoring and all. So that can come out. And second issue is that you being a scientist yourself, and won't it be easy for you to get some of the interviews of people who have been movers and shakers over last 20 years, because India officially adopted women empowerment policy in 2001, unanimously adopted, and after that the first response came from Ministry of Science and Technology, no? So it should be, you will be able to get even the primary data, no? That would also be very inspiring. Yeah.
Thank you for the motivation to dive deeper into the primary section. I was a little hesitant to do that, Professor Patel, but thanks for that.
And plus, I have names of all those 11 women who were in the mission. So if you want, I can even share their coordinates.
I would love to
Yeah.
maybe have a
Yeah.
separate conversation with you to build this research and see.
Yeah. So
Thank
I can
you.
share their mobile WhatsApp number as well. And plus, they will also share a lot of documentation. Plus,
Sure.
UN Women has also
Yeah.
prepared documentation videos on their work, no? UN
Right,
Women
absolutely. Yeah.
Over to Sanjukta ma'am now.
Yeah, thank you. That was a very interesting presentation and, a new angle, definitely. And what I wanted to say that India government actually has been doing certain things since you brought in Rwanda. I'm not very sure whether it's Rwanda or Malawi or Kenya, but we did, and I don't know whether you still do, some women from there have been brought in here from the villages of Africa, which country I'm not very sure right now because I am not in my own place. I'm actually traveling. But they were brought here to a place a place in Rajasthan where, in fact,
Barefoot College.
Barefoot College. There, in fact, they were taught about solar energy, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. And so they went back, and that made a lot of difference because in Africa, these women use that knowledge or it as such. So, that also is part of science. So it's not just a question of STEM, it's a question of even grassroots science, all right, which can help. So maybe you can add that to your knowledge, to your research also. What we have been doing, but because this is very concrete. This is something that really was helpful. I don't know whether it's still continuing. Apart from that,
even in the dairy sector, no, there has been a knowledge sharing with Rwandan women. India also gave buffaloes and this thing, and also trained women for the dairy. That is second.
So ground roots level. It's not just the higher level, higher studies of STEM or something like that. When it comes to diplomacy, it's how you are projecting. Okay, so maybe that should be brought in. I think you're doing very interesting work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Looking forward to present my work at some point. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Now I request Namgeji to go on with the presentation.
I've shared my screen. Can you see it?
Yes. No, I cannot see the screen.
Please give me a moment.
Okay.
Is it visible now?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Namgechudan. I am from Bhutan, and I am a third-year law student here at the Jigme Singye Wangchuk School of Law, which is the first law school in Bhutan. And if I move on to my presentation, my research paper is titled Empowering Diplomacy: How Feminist Foreign Policy is Changing the Global Game. And my research, I've aimed to examine how the feminist foreign policies, which was pioneered by countries like Sweden, Canada, and Mexico, are reshaping the international relations by prioritizing gender equality, human rights, and marginalized communities. So, as Sweden's former foreign minister, Marco Wallström, once said, feminist foreign policy is about standing against the systematic and global subordination of women and ensuring that diplomacy reflects peace, equity, and justice. And thereby, my research aims to see whether this is actually being achieved and the effectiveness of feminist foreign policy in achieving these. So I'll now like to talk about feminist foreign policy as a new paradigm. And in this, I have mostly focused on prioritizing gender equality. So feminist foreign policy, it prioritizes gender equality, human rights, and well-being of marginalized groups over the traditional diplomatic focuses. And in this, what we have seen in traditional foreign policies is that they have long prioritized military strength, economic gains, and geopolitical power. However, in contrast, the FFP brings a unique perspective where women's rights are treated as human rights and thereby human rights are universal. So I want to see whether the feminist foreign policies in line in international communities are actually effective in achieving these goals. And my research is a comparative case study, and the countries that I've chosen to research for my paper are Sweden, Canada, and Mexico, as they highlight the unique approaches and outcomes that can be brought through feminist policy. And if I talk about why I chose these three countries in particular, first I chose Sweden as Sweden was the first one to launch the world's first feminist foreign policy in 2014. And as pioneer, they have set standard for FFP by emphasizing on gender equality, women's rights, and peace building on the global stage. And that's why I feel that it makes Sweden an ideal place to start my research on. Then I now take into Canada. So I chose Canada as, even though it introduced its feminist foreign policy in only 2017, it has a strong focus on intersectionality. So it not only focuses on women, but it also focuses on the marginalized communities, including that of the indigenous populations in its foreign policy. And thereby it reflects a commitment to broader inclusivity, which makes it a valuable example of how FFP can adapt to national and regional needs, and thereby one of my focus areas is Canada. And the last country that I've chosen is Mexico. And I've chosen Mexico as it became the first country in Latin America to adopt, yes. It became the first country to adopt FFP in 2020, and it focuses on non-violence and human rights, and it also addresses the regional issues like migration and humanitarian crisis. So I feel like Mexico's experience shows the relevance of FFP for countries facing complex regional challenges, and that is why I have chosen these three countries. Now, if I talk about the power of feminist foreign policy, which has already been covered by many of the fellows here, it promotes gender equality, it fosters peace and security, and it challenges traditional frameworks. So, my research paper, the objective is to explore how these kind of policies actually contribute to global peace building and whether they successfully challenge the militaristic tendencies of the traditional policies. So this is my last slide. So in conclusion, feminist foreign policy represents a path forward for more inclusive, equitable, and peaceful international relations. So the success of Sweden, Canada, and Mexico can address global challenges like conflict, migration, and climate change. So from this, I want to see whether feminist foreign policy is not only a question of morality, but whether it actually is a question of security, stability, and prosperity. Thank you. This brings me to the end of my presentation.
Thank you so
So
much.
how?
Yes, over to
Thank
me.
you. Yeah. Thank you, Namgiji. Yours is very. You are going to do the critical reflection on the feminist foreign policies of Mexico, Brazil, and Sweden. But how are you going to connect it to the reality of Bhutan? And the Bhutan has been active in SAARC countries. It is also part of the SWAN, South Asian Women for Women's Network. So to certain extent, Bhutan has been represented officially, as well as the women's organizations are represented in the South Asian discourses and all. And also a lot of sharing has taken place. But how, in terms of foreign policy, you are going to connect the wisdom that comes out of these three comparative studies for the Bhutan's context?
So, Professor, for this, as Bhutan, even though we do have, to a certain extent, I would say we do have feminist foreign policy. However, has Bhutan has not really officially stated that or has really adopted that. What I was thinking that I could make some policy recommendations to Bhutan after doing a comparative case studies of the three countries, and I can, see the contextual challenges that may come to Bhutan while we are adopting these kind of practices, and recommend the policies that Bhutan can enact through the policies and the lessons learned from other countries. So in that way, I was thinking to relate back the research paper to Bhutan.
Yeah, but if you also take into consideration the legislation, Bhutan has come up with so many legislations, no, on gender-based violence, on the peace, and also on the uh, uh, capacity building of women or the representation of women in public life and all. So even if you could take that into consideration and try to connect it, that what are the internal, because yesterday even Ms. Nandita said that when you talk about the feminist foreign policy, even in the domestic policy, what measures you have taken, because without that, it won't click. It would just remain on paper. So the domestic policy and the foreign policy, we need to see what kind of symbiotic relationship does it have. So are you planning to reflect on measures, policies, and legislations that the government of Bhutan has taken with regards to gender equality? Because it is signatory to ECOSOC. Women from Bhutan also attend the regional and global meetings and the UN meetings and all. I think CEDAW has also been accepted by Bhutan. Bhutan also has a booklet. I think your department has also come up with a booklet on gender equality.
Yes, Professor. So I was actually not thinking of looking into the legislations. However, as now you have now advised me, I would definitely look into it, and I look forward to incorporating it into my paper.
I now invite Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya ji.
Yes, thank you, Fiza. I just wanted to ask that unless you, in fact, my comment was that unless you really bring in what has been said already by Dr. VIBHUTI Patel, the research that you're talking about and what you've spoken about so far has been already done. There's nothing new in it. So basically, I mean, if you are going to do Mexico, Sweden and all that, I mean, there is nothing new that you're really looking at, even if you do a comparative study, because this has already been done several times. So how you cannot have a feminist foreign policy, because what is done at home first, that is reflected outside. So if it's just a kind of comparative study of feminist foreign policies in 3 different countries elsewhere, there's really nothing new in it. So in fact, you should incorporate your own country and see what are the elements of feminist foreign policy, what should I say, the roots of feminist foreign policy in Bhutan, and whether it can be implemented, how it can be, make some policy recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. Now I move on to the next participant, Afshin Fatima ji. Are you there? Afshin Fatima ji. All right, so I now invite Bharat Singh ji to go on with the presentation.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Can
Good
you
evening.
please share my PPT? Yes. Okay. So my topic is feminizing conflict resolutions. Oh, sorry.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah. My name is Bharat Singh. I have done my PhD from the Center for African Study, School of International Study, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Basically, my work is on conflict resolutions or conflict study, and now I want to explore the uh, new dimensions in conflict resolutions theories or approaches. And this study I have taken that try to investigate that feminizing conflict resolutions through a case study of Indian female peacekeepers in Africa, in Liberia or Congo especially. And in visualization, you can see the picture. In conflict or post-conflict scenario is different. There are miseries, cries, all these things. But when the female peacekeepers there. So we can imagine how they can care the things and how they can rebuild the scenario. Please, next slide. Key objectives. First one is the foremost. My objective is to look into a alternative feminizing conflict resolutions approach, that is gender sensitive approach in peacekeeping study. Through this case study of Indian women peacekeepers, to analyze how these missions, women-led missions, impact local environment like security, gender equality, and empowerment, how they contribute there. Also, this study looks into challenges faced by these Indian women peacekeepers and what opportunity or potential opportunity we can trace. And also in the larger picture, gender and security is how much, how effective these women's participation or women's lead women's lead missions successful in such cases. Next, please. Yes. So I have arranged a few words. This my idea. I don't know it's poetry or not. I'm not in good, but I'm going to through it express myself. The title is "Woman of Peace." In lands of war, where dreams are lost, she stands strong, no matter the cost, not with anger, not with hate, but with bravery to change fate. Her helmet shines, her uniform neat. She walks with care through every street. With every step, she builds new trust, turning broken lives into life's source. Next, please. She helps the heart, she calms the sacred. In chaos, she is someone who cared, a woman of peace. She stands so tall, bringing hope where shadows fall. The battlefield sees her fearless face, yet fills her heart so full of grace. She is not just a soldier, she is not, she is so much more, a healer of wounds, a light in the war. Next, please. No shining medals, no songs of fame, yet she carries peace, her only aim. Her story is strength, her path is bright, a protector who stands for what is right. For where she goes, the future will glow. In every moment, her love will show. A peacekeeper, a brave and kind, changing the world one life at a time. Next, please. So we can see this Indian UNA awardee Major Radhika Sen's among the Congo's uh, female or their society. And in another picture, there is a medical team member who assisting the local people there. So in the conclusion, my idea is that in the larger international feminist theory, to trace the alternative more approaches to enlarge the understanding of international relations truly, how can these new dimension of study can contribute to the in not in theoretical framework but also in practical way, how can we implement it, and what is their we have alternative approaches. So that's all my study, and study is based on qualitative. This is qualitative research. So now I am in my initial stage. I am reading some secondary data. Thank you. Thank you.
Over to the experts now.
Mr. Bharat Singh, you have done it chosen a very important topic because not much is talked about the contribution made by women soldiers. But I think you should also give the historical trajectory that why India sent women in Congo and Liberia because of the so many reports, of the way men behaved in Sri Lanka and also Kunan Pushpara, also the Kashmir and all. After that, India had received a lot of critical this thing from International Human Rights Organization, UNHRC also. That brought change. And plus, in Liberia, 21% soldiers were women. So that is very important thing. Your very first slide, you have written female. Elsewhere, you are writing women. But I think better you stick to women soldiers, no? Generally, only in statistical analysis, we say male, female, and not. But in social science and this thing, we generally call women and girls and boys and men, no? So better women soldiers in that would be really very
But
good.
ma'am, there is a confusion that if we say approaches, there is a feminist approach, feminist way. That's why I
Feminist
confused.
approach. But so feminist, even men can be feminist, no?
Yeah.
Approach can be this thing. So men
Okay.
or women.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also go into the historical this
Sure,
thing
ma'am,
also,
sure.
no?
Sure,
Because
ma'am.
India has had humanitarian
Yeah.
support and the medical this thing they has done it, and Indian soldiers have been in peacekeeping force for a quite long time.
Yeah.
Even in Afghanistan,
One of the
they were
largest,
there.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Largest. Yeah. Correct. So that statistical picture also, macro picture also you can give. Within that, you situate role of women in Liberia and Congo.
Okay, thank you. Sure, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Are you a research scholar?
I have done, ma'am. I have submitted my PhD from Center for African Study. So,
So waiting for my. Okay.
Thank
Yeah.
Over to Professor Bhattacharya now.
Thank you. In fact, I had the same comment in mind about the female part in the title itself. That should be women, definitely. And the other thing that I wanted to say that you are saying that you are going to do quantitative research. Are you thinking in terms of basically empirical research? Because this is a kind of empirical research. And how do you plan to do it? Because to do interviews and things like that to get the correct picture about how far there is gender sensitivity and basically especially the women in the medical teams, they've been there for a long time in Africa and elsewhere, and you can think in terms basically of the history part which is there, because when you look at Yugoslavia, Indian peacekeepers were there, and there was a problem over there about Indian peacekeepers. So it's not just in Africa. We've had problems with men peacekeepers. So basically, women peacekeepers, how far are they different? How far are they? As they say, that women are the worst victims of war, right? Women and children are the worst victims of war. So there has to be gender sensitivity when dealing with basically conflict situations when it comes to women. And so basically what I'm asking you is that where are you going to get your data regarding this? What are your sources going to be? And it's empirical research rather than quantitative research. You said it's going to be quantitative. What do you mean by quantitative?
Excuse me, ma'am. I said qualitative research.
Qualitative. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Due to lack of resources, and I don't have too much to spend. I have just submitted my PhD. I'm looking for a job, so I'm not going to do experimental research on this right now at this stage, and that's why I give qualitative. I'm just only employed secondary resources. I'm just read some data, and I have gone through some literature in historical overview also, ma'am. But in earlier, the medical team and all things, they are different perspective, looking women that they can only do this type of soft work. Now they are leading the forefront of these peacekeeping missions, and in Liberian case, there's only full-fledged women. So there is
All
not.
women, of course, out
Yes.
there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is why I'm saying that you need to do empirical research. We're taking up a topic like this, and this topic should be taken up, definitely. It is very
Yes.
important. But consider how you can do empirical research on this and get data so
I
that
think
it's not, it's not just
yeah.
qualitative would mean, taking from other sources and putting it all down together. But think of some real research.
Yeah,
Okay?
I'm requesting you and VIBHUTI ma'am also to consider my request. I can carry out my research and they can provide me guidance and everything. So I will definitely do it. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I see, sir. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now I request Aditya Raji to go on with his presentation.
Hi everyone, my name is Trigunayat from the Department of International Relations, Sikkim University. It is my topic. Presentation is critical for confirming gender equality in international diplomacy, the case of feminist foreign policy frameworks. In this presentation, we will explore the
The video is not visible.
feminist foreign policies frameworks in India, analyzing challenges and opportunities.
Ma'am, I'm sharing the video. It's not visible.
No, it wasn't coming.
Okay, ma'am, let me try.
Ma'am, actually, Aditya ji had shared a video presentation. He is not able to present, so he has shared the video recording of it.
Even the audio is not clear.
Yes, ma'am. We'll just check once.
Ma'am, now it is visible?
Yes, now it is visible.
It's the transformative approach to diplomacy that integrates gender equality and human rights into the international relations. It challenges traditional power structures and patriarchal norms in diplomacy. It has historical marginalized women and other gender minorities. Feminist foreign policy aims to create a more inclusive and equitable global diplomatic system by advocating for the influence of gender sensitive perspective policy making process. So feminist foreign policy is significantly important because it is not only focusing on addressing the gender imbalance within the country own foreign policy, but also aims to reshape international relations. By incorporating gender equality into diplomatic practice, feminist foreign policies dismantle systematic inequalities that women face globally, ensuring their voices are heard in critical global decisions. And the research gap, feminist foreign policy in the global south. Number one is feminist foreign policy research services. Only feminist foreign policy research in the global south. And the voice of the global south has always been suppressed by the global. Number two is India's challenges. India's social political context present unique obstacles to implement feminist foreign policies. In this slide, I will explore what are the major challenges what is India is facing feminist foreign policies. My research objective is this research investigates the barriers to feminist foreign policy. India, focusing on hegemonic masculinity and social cultural constraints. So what is hegemonic masculinity and diplomatic practices? It is seen through two major structures like traditional power structure, that is hegemonic masculinity reinforces male dominance in diplomatic roles, limiting the representation. And second is consequences for gender inclusivity. This perpetuates discriminatory practices, hindering progress towards gender equality in international relations. What are the current challenges is that India is facing social, cultural, and institutional barriers in foreign policies? One is patriarchal norms. Patriarchal norms India's Indian society, influencing everything from the family dynamics, political and diplomatic resources, diplomatic structures. This reinforces the norms, creates significant resistance in policies that prioritize battery often limit women opportunities for political leadership and diplomatic roles, making it difficult to promote policies and address gender equality. For example, decision-making process in feminist foreign policy remains largely male-dominated, which perpetuates a cyclic underrepresentation of women in leadership and decision-making roles. And second is lack of representation. Women unrepresentation in political and diplomatic stage is India's significantly impacts the formulation and implementation of gender-sensitive policies. While women make up nearly half of the population, their participation in foreign policy is minimal, hindering the creation of inclusive policies that address the needs of women globally. The lack of role models and mentors of women in diplomacy and foreign affairs also discourage the participant in different fields. And third is institutional constraint. In institutional constraint, institutional frameworks, India are not designed to support the full implementation of feminist foreign policy. The government structures, resources, and mechanisms required to create gender-sensitive foreign policy are either underdeveloped or non-existent. And slide forward, embracing feminist foreign policy in diverse countries. In this slide, we can see that in the top in the hierarchy there is addressing hegemonic masculinity, which is at the top, challenging the traditional power dynamics and promoting gender inclusion. And second is we have adapting frameworks by tailoring feminist foreign policy to specific social, political context and addressing intersectional inequalities. And third is promoting inclusive diplomacy, ensuring equitable representation and fostering a more inclusive diplomatic landscape.
Sana, it has been 5 minutes now.
I want
maybe I don't know how the experts.
Ma'am, you're on mute.
It to Mr. Aditya Raj about our feedback. How will he know?
So ma'am, we were expecting that we can get the feedback here until they can watch the video. We are going to share it with the fellows so that's why they can watch it.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it is a summary of whatever has been done so far. So I think he has to bring in his own research, either by bringing primary data or focusing on one particular, like India's development assistance or trade policy or any kind of a negotiation, India's role in SAARC countries, some aspect which is nuanced and his own research that has to come out. What he has presented in PPT is the summary of whatever has transpired. In fact, if you go through the event outcome report of three previous courses on feminist foreign policy, all these things are there. So I think he needs to bring in his own research. That's my feedback. This can go as a review of literature, but yeah.
Professor Bhattacharya ji?
Well, more or less the same thing to say because there's nothing new. It's just a kind of summary. And he needs to basically give what's his objective, what is he planning to study, what is his methodology going to be. So very systematically, he has to make a proposal, which is not... Yeah.
Research questions,
research questions, they have to be there. So none of these do you find over there. So it's not really a kind of proposal or anything like that. So in fact, he needs to rewrite the entire proposal as to what is his research going to be. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Professor. Now, next I invite Mansi Malhotra ji for her presentation. Mansi Malhotra ji. Taiba Atik ji.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. Okay, can you please present my slides? I did share.
Please introduce yourself.
Sure, ma'am. So, hello everybody, I am Taiba Atik and I am from Pakistan. I have recently completed my graduation in international relations and currently I'm working as a lecturer in a government girls college. And my topic for this research program is basically feminist foreign policy within the context of the UN's leadership world. Um, Basically, I want to integrate both of these subjects to highlight a very major gap that we have in terms of achieving gender equality targets across the globe, and also to showcase implications for the feminist foreign policy. Kindly please, next slide. The next one. All right, so the introduction of the topic includes the feminist foreign policy and its aim in achieving gender equality in global governance. My focus will be specifically on the global governance, and that too within the context of United Nations. And a very major aspect which I am going to highlight through this research is that despite 80 years of history of the United Nations, we all know that it has been 80 years since the establishment of this association, but it's still yet to elect a female secretary general, which showcases that the global level gender disparity phenomena that are hindering women from taking leadership positions and contributing to the world development. And gender leadership, and later on I'll also want to talk about gender leadership disparities which are impacting decision making process in global issues, that like how it is impacting overall world performances and specifically achieving the sustainable development goals, and of course the intersection of feminist foreign policy and how it can contribute to bridge all these gaps and to help us achieve the gender equality targets. Kindly next slide. All right, so the research gap which I have found is basically that only the current data of 2022 states that only 25% of the women right now leading senior positions within the United Nations system, despite this association has 192 member states, and no female secretary general in its 80 years history, and despite that 2016 election of the secretary general in United Nations had more than 50% of the women candidates, and still none of those female person could make it to the secretary general position. And then of course the structural and cultural barriers which exist across the globe and contributing to this phenomena. And one more thing which I found is that there is no adequate literature available on the UN's leadership dynamics, especially in the context of gender patterns. So this is something which is also not available within the IR literature and needs to be researched on. So kindly next slide. The literature which I want to explore. Firstly, I want to highlight some specific examples, the successful examples of few of the countries in which we have Sweden, Canada, who has adopted the feminist foreign policy, and how they have impacted, to the world efforts for gender equality overall. I mean, if we talk about Sweden, it has a very major contribution in one of the very important UN resolution, which is 1325 resolution, emphasize on protecting women and from violence within the war, and also to advancing women to the powerful and leadership positions. And then the historical ignorance that we had with the phenomena of feminist foreign policy, because within the United Nations and within the IR literature, this particular phenomena is still has not been explored to its full potential. And further, I also want to explore some researches by IR thinkers like Antikinner and Cynthia Inol, who has talked about international politics and how it is how it has those daily life gender parity norms, and both of these authors through their literature works have also highlighted that how international relations have overall ignored the remarkable contributions of the women within the diplomacy and foreign policy. So yeah, can you next slide? The methodology for these teachers will definitely going to be the theoretical exploration, where I'm going to take up the theoretical analysis of the few of the books. The very first one, if I could mention it, Making Feminist Sense of the International Politics. It's again by Cynthia and all, and we also have another book with Gender in International Relations, Feminist Perspectives on Achieving Gender Security. It's by Trigunayat. And the resources which are other resources that I'm going to utilize are the UN reports and some of the case studies of, again, the countries who have adopted feminist foreign policy. And I also like to go for some research articles from journals. Can you next slide? The proposed chapterization for now is actually the introduction, and then going to be some historical analysis where I'm going to take some historical case studies in consideration, again the 2016 election of the Secretary General at United Nations, then the appointment of first female head of the United Nations Development Program, and then also the first under General Secretary Radhika. Case study will also be going to taken into consideration to highlight the remarkable achievements of these women, and despite all this, the global ignorance towards these their achievements and milestones. And then some case studies again. This will cover Sweden's contribution specifically, and also the UN Resolution 1325, which was adopted in 2010, and despite after so many years, its implementation unfortunately is not very active, and that has a lot to do with absence of the feminist perspectives within the UN's leadership positions, and then of course the conclusion and some recommendations to overcome the barriers. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Dayabaji, in your presentation, you have made a systematic presentation, but the newest element that you are bringing is a case study on UN leadership structure and the gender empowerment initiatives that have come up, and especially Radhika Kumaraswamy. And there are so many women after 1975, have played important role, even those 15, 20 women who were there in drafting of women peace WPS agenda, and how they galvanize UNHRC into action. I think the documentary evidences from that, if you can cull out, that would be the new knowledge that you would be bringing out. Because other things which you have said, because Sweden, Mexico, Canada, everybody has done, lot is there. But focusing on this is the invisible work that women have done within the UN, because UN also has a very hegemonic patriarchal bureaucracy, and within that also these women, they collectively endeavored to bring so many issues. The fight they had to wage to get CEDAW, some of the clauses of the CEDAW, or women's rights are human rights, such a big Vienna Convention, where they prevailed upon UN HRC that 15 days of the year from 25th November to 10th December should be dedicated to fight against gender-based violence, where the UN system was not even ready to accept gender-based violence as a national issue. They were calling it a personal issue. So I think those nuances, if you can bring out through documentary evidences or the debates or the various resolutions with the UNHRC, or even in WHO came up with a document on lack of women's leadership, though 70% of healthcare workers are women. But when it comes to leadership, they are never there. All the decisions are taken by male leaders. So I think that you can bring out.
Sure, ma'am. I'll definitely take that into consideration. Thank you.
Over to Professor Bhattacharya.
Yeah.
Thank you, Fiza. It's commendable because I think you just finished your graduation, your
Yes.
BA or MA? Bachelor's.
Bachelor's.
Okay, so it's very commendable that you have done this kind of a proposal because at this stage, well, it's quite mature. Now,
Thank you, ma'am.
what has been, yeah, absolutely. I think that is good. Now, well, of course, the UN has a gender gap. There's a big gender gap, which you have pointed out over there. But there are certain areas where, in fact, women, as has been pointed out already by Professor Patel, uh, well, they have contributed, but it's under the, it's not really played up too much. It's at the level that they're doing basic work. Now, there have been leadership positions. For instance, Navi Patel, uh, she's from South Africa. She was heading the UN Human Rights Commission at a time when, in fact, Rwanda was in flames. I mean, the post-Rwanda, problems, issues. So basically, the legal part of it. She's herself a lawyer. So the kind of work that has been done there by some of the leaders, which basically shows a kind of gender sensitivity, which probably you would not find in their male counterparts. The leadership positions, the few positions that have been held, you can kind of highlight them. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that basically, why don't you also bring your own country, Pakistan, into this? What has been done? I'm not very sure they must have signed the CEDAW. They have, of course, signed the uh, they must have signed the CEDAW, right? Have they? Has Pakistan signed the CEDAW? I'm sure that it
Yeah,
has.
yeah, it did sign.
Right. If you have signed some of these conventions, what has been done? All right. Uh, Also highlight the third point, that is, highlight UN women. What kind of work they're doing to bring about gender sensitivity within the UN. Okay.
Sure,
And
ma'am.
also,
Thank you so
Pakistan
much.
has also signed the Vienna Convention, Women's
The
Rights
Vienna.
are Human Rights. They
Right.
also every year attend both officially and the NGOs for ECOSOC, Economic and Social Status of.
So basically, if they do all that, I mean, is it kind of transferred to the domestic level? So the UN is, at another level, but this is supposed to be, within the municipal laws too. All right. So unless it is in the municipal laws, that which is there in the CEDAW, it can remain in the CEDAW. But well, the country itself, if it does not do anything about it, it's not kind of implemented in the municipal laws. Then it's nothing. So basically, you can bring in your country as a separate chapter on, right, as to how far has it implemented the conventions that it has signed, the UN conventions, right?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much for the
That
remark.
would make it more, that would be, well, interesting for everybody. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, professors. So now I invite Dhanshri Pradeep ji. Dhanshri Pradeep ji, are you here? Avni Sabruk ji. Avni Sabruk ji, are you here? Vin Paik ji.
Yes, I'm Moonbite. I would like to share my presentation. Hello? Okay.
Wait a minute, please.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, we should.
Yes. I hear my voice clearly.
Yes, yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. Let me start my presentation. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Wimpai Mew, and today I am presenting my research title is the Feminist Perspective on the Humanitarian Aid in Myanmar conflict area. This study is the conduct at the part of the Feminist Foreign Policy Fellowship Program, and then I would like to explore how the feminist principle and can transform the delivery and impact of humanitarian aid in Myanmar conflict areas. So I would like to explain of my primary objectives. The first thing is to assess how humanitarian aid currently address the specific need of women and girls and in Myanmar areas. So there is research to highlight and emphasize the critical role of local women's organizations. There is the play in the ensuring that humanitarian aid delivery is gender sensitivity and culturally related and impactful. We will find out about that one. And then I would like to achieve this, know about there are two research questions. The first thing is, what role do local women's organizations played in shaping and implementing aid practices in how to in these places? And then second thing is, how do currently humanitarian aid practices address the need of women and care in these Myanmar conflict zones? So that is the 2 point of the research question for my research. This question is guide, I think, the exploring of feminist approach that could improve an aid strategy for women and care that is empowerment and resilience for their displaced. So I will find the son of the PBS theory. The first, we can see that humanitarian is often neglects the unique need of women and girls, and including the LGBT in Myanmar conflict area and the other countries, saying like that. So traditional aid model is, we can find that emphasize is the neutrally overlapping of their critical gender-specific vulnerability. We can find that. Additionally, state or authority is very sometimes or interests often they are overshadow the feminine objective in framework like the women, peace and security agendas. This highlight the need of the inclusive approach to humanitarian aid. You can find that transcend what. And then the next of point we can find, especially aid distribution often fail to the concept of essential needs. SRH is a sexual reproductive health and the mental health support for the women and men or LGBT is not included the ones. So the local women's organization are always and quiet position to address of this case, always providing the gender sensitive incest and for children through the within their community make up. We can find that always that they say the previous study. So my research to make up the participant selection is the use of snowballing simply to recruitment participants, because I am working with the son of NGOs. Our NGO is made of the son of the feminine humanitarian is working. So we were snowballing method, we were use of that one. The next then data collection methods is we will include of the key informer interview and inter-interview. That there is the call it the qualitative research, and then finally we were I will expected to data analysis is the methods analysis to perform to identify the requirement gender specific challenges in instant in this study. So this study is to bright the identify, I think, the research advocate integration, the feminine principle into the humanitarian strategy. I am shown that. Finally, I would like to conclude of my research presentation. Current humanitarian practices in Myanmar is often overload the specific need of women and men and LGBT included that one. By incorporating feminine perspectives, I think we can ensure it is the inclusive gender sensitivity and the empowering the evidence. So it is crucial to the ethics involves women in decision-making process and to recognize the right way role of women organizations in delivery the effective humanitarian aid. These changes are essential to the long-term resilient and conflict-affected community. This is not only the Myanmar, but also the other, maybe the reference for that one. So thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate your opportunity to share my research with you today. I look forward to any question or the feedback you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Over to the experts now. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Yes.
I admire your courage of conviction and thank you for such a brave effort that you are going to make, and you are going to have a snowball sampling, collect primary data, and with that also, like I wanted to know whether who would be the stakeholders you would be interviewing. You said one stakeholder would be NGOs and those who are directly involved in humanitarian aids. Who will be the other stakeholders?
The first the first stakeholder is the NGO. The NGOs working with the conflict affected area and then including son of women lead organization. Yes. And then the son of IDI is maybe the son of beneficiary for their women in the in the conflict affected women. Yes.
Can you speak that language?
Sorry?
Of Rohingya people.
Myanmar.
Those when you said, or no,
Yeah,
those who you said when
yes.
you're talking about the
The
beneficiary.
Myanmar
So,
language is
but Rohingya and all, you can speak their language.
yes, I'm Myanmar. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And then other stakeholders, any officials or the UN bodies or international aid agencies?
Normally is I'm not thinking about that. Not only thinking the NGO leaders and women leaders, and including the son of beneficiary of our projects. So that is our beneficiary. So if you want to suggest for about that, I will that of the son of participants. Yes.
Do you have offices of international aid organizations in Myanmar?
International NGO is not directly to implement in the conflict affected area. Only the conflict affected area is implement the local NGOs, because it's conflict affected area is very sensitive and very dangerous for everything. So officially cannot implement in these places in these situations. So I can only, but we can add of son of an INGO and donor, because they were support of son of family and they were guidance of the local NGOs in this situation. So I can put and I can that of son of care and prepare for the interviewee if you suggest us. Yes.
And the
Normally
UN agencies are there because UNHRC was there even in Afghanistan under Taliban. So do you have UN agencies?
Yes. I will try that. Yes.
Thank
you. Okay. Professor, thank you.
Over to Professor Bhattacharya now.
Yeah, thank you. Your research would be very interesting and important also, because there's so little material on Myanmar, and the rest of the world know very little about what it is doing, or about basically, let alone gender sensitivity, or what they're doing for gender, or what they're doing for the Rohingyas. Apart from the conflicts, I mean, we really don't get to hear anything. So if you can do serious research, there's just one suggestion that basically when you are doing your research and you said you are going to work on Rohingya women, can you also look at the norms? I mean, FFP does not have any generalized norms. I mean, but there are. You can think about certain norms that it has, the normative structure, and UN, all right, as such. What basically CEDAW, I mean, outlines, okay, or for that matter, any other UN Women, all the directives that it gives. How far what Myanmar has been doing, if it has been doing, kind of matches up to the standards which are set globally. So that is, of course, it will be interesting for the rest of the world to study that. But your research itself, if you can do it, at the grassroots level, even what local groups are doing for Rohingyas, that will be interesting to know. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya, for reminding us about the research norms. I think it's very important because you are going to interview beneficiaries, the other stakeholders, but anonymization of locality, if your sample is small, you will have to anonymize locality and also anonymization of person who are giving you data. So I think that with the no harm, that is your research should not do any harm. So yeah, that's very important that Professor Bhattacharya told about research norms.
Okay, I will take it about that. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. If it's a very, very huge sample, then no problem. You can anonymize, you can give the data. If you say that refugees in Mumbai say, because Mumbai has a 15 million population. No? So that is there. But if it is a small area, it is very easy to identify. So if your sample is small, don't even anonymize area. No? If it is small. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite Avni Sablokji for her presentation.
Thank you. Greetings to everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm Avni Sablok from Indian Council of World Affairs. I'm currently working there as a research associate, and my area of focus includes public policy and IR, international relations, with digital public infrastructure, sustainable development, and broader themes of G20. So I also look at multilateralism. So beginning with my presentation, the topic is redefining power, analyzing the impact of feminist foreign policy on global diplomacy and social justice. Next slide, please. So my main argument is that how integrating feminist principles into foreign policy can promote social justice and fosters more sustainable and equitable diplomatic practices. Thus, how does it contribute to redefining the notion of power in the global arena? So, the paper seeks to assess the impact of FFP on conflict resolution, development aid, and multilateral cooperation. These three areas, with the key themes being gender intersectionality and social identities, grassroots movements, and influencing policies, and implementing for global governance structures. Next slide, please. So the research gap and methodology are presented in this slide. In the research gap, so most existing trends, research trends tend to focus on case studies of individual countries, and that they have incorporated feminist principles into their foreign policy. However, there is very limited scholarship that critically examines the global ripple effect of these policies and how they interact with established diplomatic norms and the institutions such as the UN, World Bank, and multilateral trade agreements. Furthermore, the impact of FFP on the lived experience of marginalized groups, particularly women of color, LGBTQ, refugees, they remain unexplored areas. So the study seeks to address these gaps by providing a comprehensive analysis of FFP's global influence. The methodology that I'm adopting is a mixed method approach with qualitative and quantitative aspects. Research aspects will be taken mostly from secondary data. I'll try to collate as many data relevant for the studies, and I'll take it forward as a theoretical analysis and review the key academic literatures. Through a case study method, I also intend to have interviews with diplomats, feminist experts in the field, so that they can provide so their own experience and outcome could be established. Next slide, please. So this contribution, so chapterization. So the first chapter would look at the definition and the principles, how discussing its core principles such as gender equality, inclusivity, human rights, and how these differ from traditional foreign policy frameworks. And then I'll also put in place some historical context because every country has a different base to how they look at feminism. So it cannot be one shoe fit all approach. What are the key experiences that can be taken into consideration in order to provide how they influence the current practices? Then case studies will be taken into consideration. So specific countries that have adopted feminist foreign policy going beyond their experiences and looking at how majorly how diplomats, for example, how diplomats, female diplomats specifically, can actually go beyond mere representation of increasing representation of women in diplomacy, and also take forward the key policy areas which are policies which are women centric to other countries where they are missing. The paper will also examine the impact on global issues, like if one country looks at aspects of policies and feminism in one way, and how it can be, for example, how in Afghanistan, when they removed all their female diplomats and they stopped supporting female athletes. So, what was the reaction of the world and how they could take it forward? Then going on to the challenges and critiques, and then for the future directions that these policies should shape in order to present a more inclusive approach, followed by a conclusion of the report. Thank you. Next slide,
So
please.
in
Stephenie Foster can. All right.
Yeah. So I think in the section on case studies, you can also mention your research triangulation that you are going to do in terms of research methodology. But one important question that women diplomats, are they fighting lonely battle, or do they have need collective voice? Do they have their association or within the country and also across South Asia? Because one knows that so many retired women diplomats have started NGOs. For example, SWAN, South Asia Women's Network, that is started by Madam Veena Kohli, who is a retired diplomat. No, so what are the kind of efforts of bringing forth collective voice so that they can be heard? No, and they can also transform the current hyper-masculine structures in diplomacy.
So I'm the first ever diplomat from Philippines, Madam Alberta. She is retired, but she's contributed a lot to the feminist foreign policy, and like how women have been at the forefront of engaging discussions and influencing diplomacy. So she's also taken an effort to bring in all the South Asian ambassadors together, female ambassadors together, and share their experiences in this regard.
And I think your organization has also come up with several anthologies, no? Of
yes, ma'am. Recently there was a book on women and power.
Yeah,
yes,
I have also contributed on transnational feminism.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and I think in that particular 3-day workshop they had, 3-day consultations. Many diplomats, ambassadors, and officers working in embassy, they also made their presentations. So,
right, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And ma'am, various embassies like the German embassy also organizes, German embassy recently organized an event on diversity in diplomacy. So through events like these, I was able to interact with women from Indonesia. So they also contributed to my case study. So I make the case studies that I'll be constructing will be more on individual experiences and how they've navigated, because this kind of experience sharing, especially with regard to female diplomats, is missing. So when a person comes into the field and does most of the work, so if sharing these perspectives actually helps out and break the men's club stereotype also, like entering those kind of arenas and navigating the way forward.
No, and what kind of assignments they get also. Dr. Meera Shankar was saying that only soft topics would be given to them, while in her case, she negotiated with Pakistan after the Simla, I think, negotiation, no? And even the Vikrant issue, how tough it was, and she had to really assert that she is capable. When she is capable. Those were the different days, but I think it is also what kind of, whether you get the challenging assignments or not. That is also the question which women diplomats are facing.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, I'll put.
Over to Professor Bhattacharya now.
Thank you, Avni. That was interesting. it's something like, the lived experience of diplomats that you're working on. But what I wanted to say is that, don't you think it's rather large? I mean, the way you presented your proposal. Okay, I mean, you have covered a very large area. Do you think you can handle it in just one kind of research work? Why don't you focus? Yeah.
Ma'am, I agree. I agree with you because that's the struggle I'm facing, confining my outputs into these particular areas. That's why I've taken just three key themes. So, how do the what I'll try to do is I'll confine it according to the timeline or the years, like how they have now evolved, because there's much study on how the grassroots movements have evolved, but now what is their agenda in the contemporary world and how are they trying to move forward from that. So I'll just try to confine them to a particular timeline.
If you do a timeline, that will be better. I mean, it'll be more focused. Yeah,
yes,
certainly. That was my comment, because I thought it was all over the place, and how are you going to handle it after all? So,
yes, okay. Thank you so much for your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, professors. Now, there are two more video presentations, and before that, I'd like to announce the names again for the ones who were not present earlier. So if you are present now in the meeting, you can continue with your presentation. Afshin Fatima ji, Mansi Malhotra ji, and Dhanshri Pradeep ji. Are you there? Any one of you? Afshin Fatima ji, Mansi Malhotra ji, and Dhanshri Pradeep ji. All right. So next, we'll move on to Claire for the video presentation.
Afshin has done it.
Is the video visible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good afternoon, esteemed professors and colleagues. My name is Claire Edbajo. I am a first-year graduate student of Asia Pacific Studies in Thammasat University, Thailand. Allow me to present to you very briefly about my research project for this fellowship titled Decolonizing the WPS Agenda, a comparative analysis of Indonesian and Philippine NAP WPS. My project basically revolves around this research question. But to further understand its contextual background, let me briefly discuss the state of literature on this topic. My literature review focuses on these three themes. First, critical feminist approaches to WPS. Second, the colonial perspectives on gender and security. And third, regional implementation of WPS in Southeast Asia. There are existing literature on country-specific analysis of WPS implementation in Southeast Asia. However, they lack critical comparative perspectives, particularly from post-colonial and decolonial feminist standpoints. As we have learned in the past 8 sessions, such perspectives are crucial for understanding how countries navigate between global WPS norms and local realities, especially in addressing colonial gender norms embedded in security frameworks. And so, this research aims to address this gap through a comparative analysis of Indonesia's and Philippines' most recent national action plans on women, peace, and security, or NAP-WPS. In particular, I aim to examine whether these post-colonial states have adapted, resisted, and/or localized Western-centric WPS frameworks within their distinct historical and cultural context. I will utilize a qualitative methodology. In particular, I will use a critical discourse analysis. In doing so, I will conduct close reading of my primary documents and supplement them or triangulate my findings with other related policy reports, including CEDAW reports or UNSCR 1325 reports and similar documents. Of course, this approach has its own limitations, particularly because one, I do not speak Bahasa, and therefore I am just relying on the official translations of Indonesia's NAPWTS and its related policy documents. Second, since I am already examining the existing documents, I may overlook or miss some context and nuances, especially those related or relevant to the development, local development of these policy documents. But notwithstanding these limitations, I intend to address them by situating the text and my analysis of them within broader historical and political context, especially by using big descriptions and triangulating multiple secondary sources. Additionally, a comparative approach is also an added value or will also provide an added value in my analysis as it will allow me to identify overarching patterns and highlight distinct features of these post-colonial societies where they are available. Now, drawing from the extant literature, I have identified these three themes through which I will anchor my analysis. And as you can see, each of the themes have their own guide questions, which will help me operationalize each one. And each theme are related to one another as they progressively reveal different layers of colonial power. At the ontological level, we have an examination of the gender systems. Second, the epistemological level, an examination of the nature of knowledge production, and of course, the material aspect, we examine the economies of vulnerability. And so by analyzing this NAPWTS of Indonesia and Philippines, I aim to contribute to deconstructing and operationalizing what it means to decolonize feminist foreign policy. So I think that is all for my presentation. Thank you for your time and apologies for not being here live. I review the session recording so that I can hear your feedback and comments. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. Indonesia had a very robust feminist movement during the decade, and they were always very vociferous, and so many alternative country reports also they had prepared. So are you and which has also shaped the priorities, no, of Indonesian foreign policy as well as the trade policies, and bringing in some of the important dimensions of gender concerns, even its relationship with Timor-Leste. I think I'm going to bring some of these uncomfortable questions which the feminists have raised in your analysis. Oh, Acha, she's not there. Okay. Indonesia's relationship with Timor-Leste and how the Indonesian feminists and feminists from Timor-Leste, they also have worked together for the democratic rights of the Timor-Leste population.
Over to Professor Bhattacharya now.
Yeah, since she's not present, just well, I can't ask her directly, but why? In fact, it would be a more compact thesis if she worked only on Indonesia rather than bring in Philippines also. So that was my comment. I mean, because what Professor Patel said is very relevant. There has been, and there are very uncomfortable questions which are raised within Indonesia, and present policies, past policies, these also have to be compared, which is actually quite a handful. So I do not know why she's brought in Philippines over there, because that itself also is another big area to work on. So maybe she should stick to one country. That's it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. With this, we move on to the last presentation, video presentation by Jubin Gogoiji.
Is the video visible?
So the video is not.
The video is still not visible, Sana.
Okay. Now is it visible?
Yes.
Not audible.
Ma'am, actually the voice is very low. The speaker is speaking in a way.
It's not only low, it's breaking. We can't hear.
That actually, ma'am, is the problem on the part Jubin Gogoi ji has recorded. I mean, it is not a problem from Sana's end, I guess.
So. No, we can read it, but the audio is of no use.
Ma'am, we can ask him to resend it later.
Or present it himself, whatever.
Yes, because
I
it's
think that's a much better idea.
Because it's actually not audible for feedback purpose.
Yeah.
We'll do that. We'll get back to him in the next session.
Yeah.
All right. So with this, we have come to an end for today's presentation. So I request Vibhuti ma'am for his closing remarks for today.
We're quite happy, and I think it was really nice to have Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya. We corroborated and complemented each other, and her vast knowledge of political science, political theories, and also acclimatization with the direct involvement in the women's movement. I think both of us have the same political trajectory, so it was really very important that both of us commented on the proposal.
In fact, I just got to know half an hour before because I was outside and then. Anyway, I mean, it was good being here.
Yeah, but I think the seriousness of the participants, I think, and the commitment with which they have written, I think is very important because when we started the course, I got a lot of criticism, and also some of them rebuked me also for dwelling into this subject, which they don't consider, which is just imperialist agenda or the agenda of the white feminists. But we have seen that so many important things which are happening at a local level, at a ground level, in different Asian countries and African countries. I think this kind of a collective knowledge, collective endeavor is going to enhance our understanding and make a strong case, because it's not only the women from industrialized world, or as Madam Spencer told us on the first day, it is a male, Yale and pale who are thinking of, who are controlling the foreign policy. Lot of inputs have come from ground level, both from the women's movement and women diplomats and women and the civil society organizations. So I think bringing this knowledge and coming out with collective wisdom is really going to have a great transformative potential. And I congratulate all the participants who have really ventured into some of the unknown areas and with great confidence.
And to add to that, I think they've listened to all the lectures very well. To have come up with, so one really admires them for that. Yes.
Yeah, they're really attentive.
They're attentive.
Thank you so much, professors. So as we conclude the session for presentations today, I, Fiza Mahajan, visiting researcher at IMPRI, would like to express my gratitude on behalf of the Asia Foundation, New Delhi, IMPRI Center for International Relations and Strategic Studies, and IMPRI Gender Impact Studies Center, New Delhi. I would like to thank our chair, Professor Vibhuti Patel, and the expert for today, Professor Sanjukta Bhattacharya ji, for taking out their valuable time and providing valuable suggestions and guiding the fellows. And we look forward to seeing you all on December 13th for our last session. And we hope that this fellowship will be a transformative and enriching experience for you all. I wish you all a very great day. Thank you.
So we have covered
you.
30 presentations so far.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Fiza.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Fiza and Vaishali and Priyanka for your hard work.